Welcome again, Daniel.
To be here, as you noted, with me right now is our Division Chief for County Roads, Daniel Bitter. County Roads is the next item we'll be discussing. So diving right in, you'll see on the overview some increases to salaries and benefits, with operating holding pretty consistent at a 3% increase. There is a about 37% increase in capital, which we will address. Some of the highlights: we are proposing a reclassification and promotion of one employee from MEO 1 to MEO 2. On the operating side, we have seen a significant trend in parts, the cost of parts becoming more expensive. If you look at the third item there, the machinery equipment supply, we are requesting an additional $4,000 to fund the regular repair parts, fuels, oils needed for repairs in our shop. And I wanted to start there because during FY24, we actually had to reallocate funds out of that first item, the machinery equipment service. We had to allocate $18,000 worth of funds from that towards the machinery equipment supply. So the first item, the equipment service, that's third-party outside repairs. And because we had to move money out of that this year, we would be requesting that $18,000 to get vehicles that had service delayed, get that service done as quickly as possible, and then continue the routine service program through the balance of the year. And again, that all comes back to just the price of replacement parts increasing. The winter roadway treatment, we are requesting an increase in funding for salt. We want to increase the salt content of the mixture used to treat the roads. This is because, from what we've been seeing, there's a few different factors, but generally our snowstorms have been at higher temperatures, around the 30-degree mark. And the result of that is that there's a lot of melting, refreezing, and back and forth throughout a storm, resulting in a solid pack of ice and snow on the roads, something that can't really be plowed. We had a few complaints over the winter with recent storms where I haven't seen the plows and there's still snow on the ground. Well, it's the type of pack on the road that can't be plowed. So our proposal to rectify and more adequately address that would be to increase the salt content, get them out early in the storms, salting the roads, preventing that pack from developing. And though we are requesting $14,000 in additional funding for the salt, we would anticipate to see a reduced cost of diesel fuel, a reduced cost in terms of overtime man hours during the storm. If we appropriately treat before and beginning of the storm, we would need less trips on the back end, and that would also result in less wear and tear on the vehicles.
Dan, in past years, ever since I've been here, our intersections and stuff, to be perfectly honest with you, always never looked like as good as the state highway or even some of the towns. And the reason being is because we used to use sand all the time and never used, and the theory, or at least what I was told, is that the reason we didn't use salt, which is going to really do the job, is because we had a lot of tar and chip roads, and they always claimed that they did some damage to those roads. But I don't know whether that's true. That at least that was somebody's belief, and that's why we always use sand. But it's never going to do the job that salt do, especially and those intersections. I agree with you. I think we should use salt instead of sand because that's the dangerous part where people have to stop and take off
and higher turning,
going around the corners and stuff. So
yeah, and to that point, we do use 4 to 1,
Maybe,
about 4 or 5 to 1 ratio of
Salt.
sand to salt right now. We would be looking to increase the amount of salt in the mixture. So we would still be using a mix, but we want to put more salt into the average mix that we get on the roads. with the hope of, increasing and a melt and sustaining the melt so that we can clear the roads as opposed to it building, as we see, as you're aware, it building up kind of a snowpack on the road, and at that point, there's not much plowing that can be done.
Yeah,
Still slippery as a devil.
kind of at the mercy of temperatures. Like the one storm we had this past winter, it was during the weekend, and temperatures didn't get above freezing. So after the snowpack, there's just nothing we can do other than wait for the temperature to move up. We keep on putting sand over it over and over, but that only gives you grip,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So we would be increasing our funding for salt, but we anticipate, as I said, diesel fuel, man hours, and wear and tear on the trucks all to go down as a result of the increased funding towards salt. The training and specifically CDL training, we are projecting to be much lower next year. We've had high turnover within the division in the past few years, and the new employees who we've brought on have all received the appropriate training, so therefore, we were able to reduce that budget, combined about over $5,000. From there, our capital requests. This is an overview of the capital requests. I will speak to these in a couple minutes, but there is a new standard cab dump truck, a purchase of a used bucket truck, a tractor with A-boom. You see some information about the paving program anticipated for FY '25. It is a total of 5 roads. We have scoped out a surface treatment program that is pretty comparable to what we have for FY '24. In FY '24, we are looking at a little over 12 and a half miles of road. In '25, we would be anticipating about 13 and a quarter miles. So about 3/4 of a mile increase. And you see the large capital project being Lamson Forest Road Bridge. That design is currently in progress. And that is a project that is partially funded by the federal bridge replacement funding. I believe they are 80% of the total project. We intend to complete that in the fall of calendar year '24. The next slide I wanted to speak to. This is something I had our roads department put together. There's been some talk about staffing and number of employees for different projects the roads department handles. And I wanted to just come up with a tally of some of our most common activities and what type of crew they really entail. So you can see the 3 regular big type of maintenance and project that they do are the tree trimming, the culvert pipes, and the tar and chip operations. Each of those requires a 9-person crew. And the way the department is set up now, there are 14 MEOs. So we are able to today run 1 culvert pipe replacement on a given day with about 5 employees dedicated to other activities, mowing, and
9 people to replace a culvert pipe?
Well, some of it is driving, getting the material to and from the job, 2 flaggers, a couple ground guys, crew leader. So it adds up. So if we've got a pipe halfway across the county, we have to drive to Tallchester or go up to Massey where our yards are. Sometimes you need 3 or 4 trucks to try to get that pipe done in a time frame during work hours, so.
So we would, yes, we would typically dedicate 9 people to that project, with some of them not being present all the time, hauling material to and from, which leaves us 5 for all the other things the roads department needs to handle. And that's when we're fully staffed. That's assuming no one's on vacation, sick, or otherwise absent for the day. Our proposed organizational chart is, I believe, consistent with previous years with 2 full crews, 9 MEOs per crew. That would allow us to, at full workforce, run 2 independent projects, or given absences, vacations, et cetera, have a full crew supplemented by additional people performing spot maintenance, brush cleanup, mowing, things of that nature. I did want to go back to the capital projects, and
Is
we'll,
that chart, is it full now? Is it fully staffed? or close?
This is the proposed.
this is our proposed,
Oh, okay.
yes,
So right now you are down
4.
the positions that have been unfunded. So to have the 2 full crews, you'd have to reinstate 4 positions. If you don't reinstate 4 positions, that's when you run into the trouble of running, you can run 1 full crew and then a couple of other things going on.
Spot maintenance type activities happening.
Stuff that doesn't take a full crew.
In the summertime,
complete.
how many people you have mowing in the summertime?
Typically, when it's full, it's 3 mowers, and we have, then plus the A-boom, so it's 4 altogether. Last year, we just had 2 going with the A-boom. That A-boom tractor runs all year round, so. But last year, we just had two side mowers with the bush hog running through the whole county. We'll start on one end and work our way around, so, yep.
I can tell you, if I, in my time here, if you're gonna hear a complaint about the county roads, about the mowing.
Yes, the tall grass at
They
intersections,
can't,
yeah. At the weather, well, with the weather is the way it is now, but typically we get about 3 rounds through the whole county. We might get 4 at the very end, and it's something, and last 2 years it stretched into November, December, because we try to get up in the fields when the farmers get the crops off to try to get the sight distance back, before they start getting, stuff gets overgrown and a lot bigger, so.
Yeah.
Yep, it can stretch into November, December, depending on weather, so.
But the proposed staffing would allow us to either operate 2 completely independent crews on a given day, or 1 crew with additional or full mowing staff, in other words. With regard to the capital budget and requests, there are a couple items. Our top priority listed is the Lamson Forest Bridge project, which I mentioned. The second request deals with the standard cab dump truck. And I believe there's a few pictures up there.
We have some pictures. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's-
Hit the wrong key.
There it is.
Yep, sorry.
No, it's all good.
There it is.
There,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is we're proposing the replacement of a 22-year-old dump truck with obvious, rust issues in the cab and the frame, as well as the underbody. This truck has almost 200,000 miles and almost 18,000 hours of service on it. We do anticipate, if not replaced, this would require extensive repairs. And the average useful life of this type of truck is generally around 10,000 hours. As I mentioned, we're almost at 18,000. So that would be a capital request for this year. The next,
How many dump trucks, so how many do you have sit in the yard when you're working? Do you have?
Typically, we have 9 trucks for our routes when we're doing snow and storm cleanup and all like that, and 3 spares.
Okay.
So they take up, so if another truck's in the shop getting its maintenance or whatever, then we have those 3 spares and 1 specialty truck has a shoulder box on the rear for doing shoulder work. It's got a belt, so that's
You
pretty.
answered my question. So we have 3 spares?
Yep,
then?
that's it, yep.
And in the FY '23 budget, there was a dump truck that was ordered.
yes.
Did you receive it this year?
It should be here in the next month or so.
So you're still waiting for that?
It's anticipated to be received this fiscal year, but
Yep.
yet we have not yet.
So you have 3 spares and a new one coming in.
Yes.
So we'll have 4 spares.
But typically we usually just keep 3 spares and we'll typically sell or
Okay.
something will happen.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Has that one already been paid for, the one that's coming in?
I do believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
It was rolled, that money was rolled over from,
23.
yeah, from 23, yeah.
We don't pay for them till they arrive.
Till they arrive.
Okay.
We are on
But
that
it was-
cycle where.
It was allocated.
It's been
Right.
It's been-
budgeted.
It's projected and it's in the budget, so.
Okay, yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's in this year's budget.
Yes.
24. The next truck I wanted to discuss is our bucket truck, which is used for the tree trimming program. The current truck has almost 250,000 miles on it. And we are seeing a significant amount of repair and service required to that truck because of the height at which this truck operates. There are OSHA certifications required, which, to maintain them for the old truck that we have, the 31-year-old bucket truck we have, is requiring extensive routine service. We have investigated and been able to identify some used bucket trucks that we could purchase as opposed to going new to save some money on that front.
How old did you say that truck was?
31,
31 years old.
yes, sir.
It's pretty good advertisement for Ford.
Yeah. 31, I don't have the mileage on it, I don't think.
Yeah, it's-
250,000 miles, just about.
Yep.
So, we are also requesting an A-boom tractor. We have one A-boom tractor right now, yes, okay. This is used for, trimming trees, brush, hedges, dealing with the mowing around the guardrails, embankments, ditches. We have a 2013 that every 200 hours requires a few days' worth of maintenance. So while that truck is in the shop, we cannot conduct our routine maintenance, our routine mowing maintenance. We were requesting a second one to cycle with our existing tractor in order to keep a more consistent and cohesive mowing program.
Those things can do a lot of tree trimming down these old roads and stuff
Yep.
there.
Yeah, it goes all year round. It
They
doesn't
can
stop.
make a place really look nice with that very little bit of manpower.
Yep,
Yes. Yeah, those are just one operator?
yep. It's a slow process. He could be on the road for a few days. It's a slow process, but once it's done, that road's good for a few years, so.
If I've sat behind one of the tractors, I assume everyone in the room has, so know the speed at which they go.
Yeah, pretty slow. Yep.
There's some information about the proposed paving projects, as well as there's some detailed information about the scope for those.
Yeah, why are we paving as opposed to the tar and chip, which we generally do?
So that is a good question. There are certain roads that are definitely worth paving because of the usage. There are some roads where the typical practice had been that paved roads get repaved, tar and chip roads get tar and chip. That is something we could potentially look at, tar and chipping over paved roads. Obviously, there's a difference in driving on a tar and chip versus paved. And if someone's road gets converted, they would need to get used to that.
I can shed a little bit of light on some of those projects because we're also, a lot of these housing developments, those roads are under air care. And the one, I forget what the name of that one is called, is when you leave Chestertown.
Orchard Drive
On the left where you
Yep.
turn,
on the right, yeah, Orchard Drive, we tar and chipped it.
Yep.
we caught so much devilment, we
Yep.
had to go back and pave it. You remember
The
too.
residents almost tar and chipped
I remember,
it.
I wasn't in this seat, but I remember.
Yeah.
Brambles went right behind us and blacktopped it because of the backlash of tar and chip, and ever since it was, if it's in blacktop, we blacktop it again, but we have some roads coming
I
up.
think that's what it's boiled down to. Whatever's paved, we pave, and whatever's tar and chipped, we tar and chip, don't we, or something?
Yes, that's been the general philosophy, yes. Like I said, I don't know if any on this year, but there are some roads moving forward where we could give consideration to converting to tar and chip, which I believe is about a quarter of the cost.
Yeah, it's about a quarter of the cost between tar and chip and blacktop, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, and there are times when you take a tar and chip road, and if it's got dips and valleys in it, and you tar and chip it, you still got dips and
Oh, yeah.
valleys, they just tar and chip. And
Yep.
eventually, in order to smooth it out,
And the
they pave it.
Yep.
Yep.
Wedge and level, yeah.
And that can be a function of the usage of the road. The higher use roads will see greater wear, and pumping, as well as the subsoils.
In my time, I remember there was a few roads that would come in that people were complaining that they'd really gotten out of
Yeah.
whack,
Yeah.
and the only answer was to go in there and pave them, and,
Yep. Yeah, if we see.
but they are much more expensive, as
Oh, yeah.
They are.
pointed
They,
out.
it lasts longer. It's a more durable, road. And like I said, usage, the stability and strength of the subsoils, presence of groundwater, all those factors can play in the equation in terms of, ultimately should a road be paved versus tar and chip. And because it's tar and chip this time, to your point, 10, 15 years down the line, it may be worth paving if we see structural issues with a road, so. The tar and chip program, there is a road list included in the package. I don't know if you'd like to, we can discuss, any specific road or.
And it's up on the screen right now.
Yep. And then, the final request is, again, the same request from last year related to the village at Kennedyville. Converting their, what is currently a sediment pond into a stormwater basin, as well as some spot infrastructure improvements, things like, lights and road repairs. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention during the personnel discussion is the increased personnel we are requesting would be MEO ones. We wouldn't be looking for necessarily 2 or 3s. Doing the breakdown I showed earlier was a really good exercise, I think, between myself and Daniel and some of the other folks in roads to determine who can and should be operating different equipment on a given job and where the need truly exists. So we would be looking for MEO ones as opposed to 2 and 3s.
And opposed, in opposition to what, just to new, you want the MEO one?
Right, as opposed to looking for more experienced 2s and 3s.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, yeah, we feel we have a pretty strong top-end workforce
I got you.
that's skilled with things like the grade all and the grader. We just need additional horsepower at the lower end of the scale.
For the village of Kennedyville, at some point, since I've been sitting here, there was talk about streetlights,
Yes,
and that was supposed to be part of phase one. Were some of those lights ever put in?
no, those would be part of the capital request this year. I believe there are 2 streetlights for phase 1 and an additional 2 for phase 2.
One of the things, I think, one of the holdups was we had to get the roads in our name.
Yes,
And turn over to us, and now that's been done. So,
as well as I believe Mike had spoke to it, but the pond in the middle of Kennedyville was designed as a sediment basin as opposed to a stormwater pond. And, well, it was designed for, in construction, to be a sediment basin. All the runoff from the site would collect there. The sediment and dirt would settle out with clean water on top. It was never formally converted into its final form of a stormwater basin. That conversion is basically scooping out all the accumulated sediment, and making sure that it's sized to the appropriate dimensions to function with the community. So that cost would also be included in the capital request item.
We had a lot of conversations about the lights when we adopted that road out there. Was any money put in the budget for the
No.
lights for FY '24?
There was money in the budget, but it got cut.
Okay. Any further questions? That would conclude roads.
Yep.
any
Thank you.
questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And because we jumped ahead
Yep.
before lunch, we are almost right on target, a few minutes ahead. So,
And joining me for this portion will be Mark Dixon, our maintenance supervisor. We'll be discussing building maintenance and then grounds maintenance. Got it. Cool. Building maintenance, there is a 4% increase proposed for the operating budget and a 357% increase for capital. That's largely one project, which I will speak to in a moment. But the operational increases, Johnson Controls, our HVAC maintenance, they have a 5-year contract entering year 3 with a scheduled 5% increase. I say scheduled, it was part of the initial contract at the time of submission. We're proposing maintaining that contract and renewing it for the 3rd year. We have seen over the last year, improved service and good quality and value in that contract with, the aging systems in the buildings. And as their, technicians have gotten more and more accustomed to and knowledgeable to our specific components and systems, we've seen a successful relationship there. Fuel oil, we're requesting an additional $10,000 for. We have seen costs go up, and the nature of the fuel oil, some years we start with full tanks, and we maybe need to fill up once. That was this year. Some years, generally speaking, we start with half full tanks or less, and so it basically, 1 year is a little cheaper because we only need to fill up once. The next year, we typically need to fill up twice, and then the 3rd year, we're back to filling up once. And we're requesting the increase because we anticipate FY '25 to be one of the years that require additional fill-ups. Building supplies, we have seen an uptick in prices as well as demand, the requests for replacement of different supplies. So we're proposing an increase of about $3,500 there. There's a contract increase for the state attorney office, which shows up in building maintenance. There are several hand tools which need to be replaced for the maintenance staff, the shop vac, power washer, and assorted other tools at $2,700. And we have seen water sewer usage and rate increase, so we are proposing a $2,400 increase to that as well. On the capital front,
So this contract
I'm sorry.
increase for the rental space, you said that was for the state's attorney's office?
yes, sir. On the capital front, there has been a program for this building, the Government Center, to replace 2 HVAC units per year. We were able to only replace 2 in FY '24, and we've worked with Johnson Controls to identify 2 more that are the the highest priorities for FY '25 replacement. And we have gotten proposals for those replacements, which combine to just over $27,000. So that would be the continuation of an annual program we've had. And we are also looking to start a similar program for the courthouse. We had 2 units completely go down in '24 that required replacement, and we see several that would be high priorities as well. So we're proposing starting a annual replacement program of 3 units per year. That building has 12 more HVAC units than this building, so it's 54 total in the courthouse, which is why we are proposing 3 a year as opposed to 2, because
What type of fuel are these furnaces?
they are propane?
Propane.
Propane, yeah.
All of them,
Mhm.
everywhere?
So, both of those programs, it would be continuation here at 400 and initiating a new program for the courthouse based on our evaluations as well.
And the other reason I bring that up is because with this new green energy push, are there any types of incentives for government buildings to switch to electric units and become a little more self-sufficient? We don't need to get into the weeds on this right now.
We
but I'm
can
just- I'm
investigate what
thinking,
programs may be out there,
you know,
yes.
yeah.
As opposed to just replacing in kind.
Maybe, if this thing continues going down the path that it's going down, I mean, they don't want us driving cars with gas in this. So, just something to think
Okay,
about if there's anything
definitely.
out there maybe that would help us.
So then the biggest of the capital items is the library roof. The roof on the library is at least 20 years old. We had extensive repairs required this year. My understanding is that there is a history of leaks around the exterior windows that kind of stick out from the building due to the design of the gutters. But we had two guys for about a week up there throughout the course of this year, replacing shingles and hammering them back down, sealing up around the dormers from the roof of the building. And during that work, there were several soft spots found. The roof decking itself is.
Nails pulling out of the plywood.
Yes, yeah, we were able to handle the work in-house, and it wasn't an exorbitant cost for repair, but it was a quite extensive, pretty much throughout the entire roof, and a time-consuming process to fix up as best we could what is out there. However, it became very apparent during the work that the roof has served its useful life and is nearing the end of that. So we would propose a new roof for the building. Here at 400, there is also some windows that have been determined to be in very poor condition, allowing water through, leaks, and just general deterioration. So we're proposing replacement of 3 windows. And then in the basement of this building, there is an area of water intrusion we see regularly during storms. It appears that the building may be separating, and we would like to bring in a structural engineer to do a full evaluation to determine if this is purely a water issue or something much more severe.
Where's that picture taken at?
Basement. Down in the basement of this building.
In this building?
Yes, as you can see, we would like an evaluation of the building to determine the extent of repairs that would be required, and whether it's a bigger problem than just waterproofing.
Easy field trip, we can take you down there anytime.
I was
We can
curious
take
to
you
say,
down
like,
there
yeah,
anytime.
yeah.
Take a look around.
And then we are proposing a new dump trailer that would be configured to suit the leaf vacuum, which they regularly use. The trailers we have now can be made to work with the leaf vacuum, but it takes several hours on the front and back end to move things around and attach things in the right spot. And the dump trailer is not fully operational when the leaf vacuum's in use. So we would like to order a new one that would be better suited for the use. And then there's a couple big capital projects at the bottom. The EMS facility we discussed prior. We have allocated funding towards the Midshore Regional Detention Center. And in conversation with Shelley and Pat, we did want to list the 911 and Sheriff's Office facility with no immediate plan, but to keep it on the forefront of our minds that there is obviously a project to happen there in concert with the Regional Detention Center.
Before we move on too far here,
Yes, sir.
the structural evaluation and recommendations, from the picture that you showed us here today, that's alarming to me. And I think it is to all of us probably. Structure-wise, along with the deteriorating, leaking windows here that we have here. You know, tonight we plan on maybe talking about some other things that we could use our contingency funds for. And maybe these 2 items might be something that we want to not really put off. And maybe consider getting an evaluation to see what we're looking at, especially
Absolutely.
before we balance the budget.
I think both of those those are not long-term type projects, long lead type projects. If funding was available, we would be able to execute them within FY '24.
We will probably talk about that tonight and make a decision then, but
Okay.
just so you know.
Good. Thank you. And the final piece here is just the personnel detail. There are no changes to the current organizational chart. As you recall, last year, Buildings and Grounds was combined into one department with Mark as the supervisor. And the maintenance workers, where they used to be separated, are now a pool, and Mark is able to cross-utilize them depending on the need. And in the very near future, we will be interviewing, I believe, 3 deputy director candidates. So that position is intended to be filled for FY '25.
Good. That's, yeah, when you go through one of these budgets, you see where we got enough work for one.
And if you can believe it, my final portion of today's presentation is grounds maintenance. We are projecting,
I'm getting there.
yep, sorry, no, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay. Okay.
About 13% operating increase, and obviously 100% stands out, but there was no capital for grounds in '24. We are proposing the purchase of a new mower for this department, with a trade-in of our oldest mower. And if you were to look at the 5-year plan, we would be proposing about one every other year. The operating costs, similar to building and grounds, the water usage and the costs have gone up. We added an annual program for playground mulch and volleyball court sand at about $5,500 combined. The playground mulch would be used as needed throughout all the parks within the county. It's a specialized product. It's not just wood chip. It's playground certified quality mulch that's safe for play. There are legal requirements related to things like, at the bottom of a slide, there needs to be only so much of a gap between the bottom of the slide and the top of the mulch so that the kid's not falling too far off of the slide, and an appropriate depth of mulch for safety. And we would like to have it in the budget to make 2 or 3 times a year purchases of that playground quality mulch to continue replenishment of our playgrounds, as well as the volleyball courts at Wharton Park. Pretty regularly at the start of each season need some additional sand. They've done a good job this year of screening and cleaning up what they can. But in the time I've been here, it's been needed, sand has been needed to replenish that court twice. So we wanted to earmark some money in the budget to maintain that on a regular basis, supplement that on a regular basis. Then some other minor operating increases to parks and the small buildings we have at them, and some increased part prices for mower maintenance. That would conclude grounds maintenance, unless you have any questions.
When we're talking about ground maintenance, just from my colleagues, you have all the parks to mow, plus all the public landings.
We don't do the landings.
Huh?
We don't do the landings.
You don't do the landings.
Environmental operations
Environmental.
handles
That's a
the mowing at the
separate-
land, yes, public landings within environmental handles those, but grounds maintenance does all the parks. And the bathhouses at the parks, and
What about the Ag Center?
the ag center.
Is that grounds, does that?
We met with the ag center a few weeks ago. They were requesting once a month, I'll call it maintenance type mowing, so not cutting it short with 0 turns, but keeping it maintained so that when they do have events, they can come in with the 0 turns. Roads Department has the appropriate equipment, and the actual labor will be split on an on-off basis between roads and grounds. Monthly and then they will give us a few weeks' notice for big events, the 4-H fair, obviously, and a few other ones, where we can come and supplement them as needed for the finer mowing. Grounds will also be handling maintenance of Kennedyville as well.
It's a lot of grass to cut.
Until we.
It is.
All over the county with
Yeah,
that-
it is.
with that.
But they'll be handling that until the next person picks up that torch.
Absolutely, yes. We anticipate for this summer. they
Yeah,
will be
you're
handling full
probably
summer,
right, yes. Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say, is you can see the org chart in there, and it is a lot of work for a few people.
Yeah. No wonder Mark looks, he's 35 years old and looks like that.
All right. Any other questions of Mark, or you still got more?
That's my last one.
Sure.
He can present more if you want him to.
No, that's,
I did share with Commissioner Fithian before the meeting, but the granary was scheduled to start demolition today. Given the weather, it will start Thursday.
very good.
Well, the IT department's next, and I don't think they need much time, so.
What-
If there's anything else you need to talk about, or
That's all I got, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
I would put them under tab 20. Yeah, they're under the Sylvan tab.
Okay, yeah, he
Be
wanted.
appropriate, the IT guy shows up with a computer.
That's right. Do you, do they have the diagrams? Okay, excellent. All right. So there was information pertinent to the budget that I can't display on the screens because it's streaming publicly, but it's for you to follow with the presentation. I could go through the traditional way where we talk about operating capital, but I think what I've done over the years is sometimes it gets confusing because a lot of our services are services and some of them are capital, but they're the same, right? So you might have a capital product that requires services. So that's why what we created for you with these videos, it shows our current fiscal year, what we're proposing to you for the next fiscal year, and then ultimately to kind of give you an idea of what we're leading towards, right, is FY '28, right? So you can see this sort of multi-year buildup. And, I wonder sometimes when I come in here and I say, hey, we need this product, and, I make a great case, but you may be wondering, are we just adding something else on top of something that was previous, and, where does it end? So hopefully this visual gives you an idea of where we currently are when we ask for something, that it's either replacing it and, an enhancement. So if you don't mind, if we can use these diagrams, I'll kind of walk you through the items. So if you look at FY '24 as an example, you see down at the bottom how you have the big white area that's separated into 3 data centers, and then you have what looks to be the front end of machines, right? Those are like images of servers, okay? So that would indicate that they're on premise, that they're here, okay? They're capital expenditures, there's something that requires cooling, electricity, real estate, all that kind of stuff, right? And within one, if you look in data center 2 to the left, you can see, for example, antivirus is in there. Now, one of the things we're coming to you for this year, it's an increase by almost 50% more, is an upgraded antivirus. But what it does is, if you look in FY '25, the next slide, you'll see that in the top cloud to the left, you'll see antivirus resides up there. So what we're doing is, we're taking a product that was on-premise, that required a lot of extra services here, again, cooling, electricity, so forth, and we move it to a cloud-based product. So basically, it's somebody else's infrastructure, right? So in the long term, it becomes cheaper. So there's one example. The biggest item for us is going to pertain to the data storage and backups. So we're at a critical stage right now where we can't sufficiently back up all the data that we have and what's coming. It's growing at an exponential rate that we did not foresee, and the majority of it is due to body camera footage. It's an enormous amount of data. It's incredibly important for all parties involved, as I'm sure you know. It's for law enforcement and those affected by whatever incidents are being recorded. The issue right now is that we have, the sheriff's office side, they have their own sort of cloud-based storage, right? But right now, we have state's attorney that has to have their own copy of that evidence, right? It's video evidence. The amount of data, amount of storage that data takes up is unbelievable. I mean, we're redlining to the point where we're grabbing data right now that we think may not be necessary on a day-to-day basis, and we're offloading it onto external drives just to free up room. So we're really robbing Peter to pay Paul. The current infrastructure cannot keep up with that, okay? So while we know that there are some attempts out there, I think, to figure out how to make it so that state's attorneys or any of the other agencies can have access to the cloud-based services that the sheriff has, that's not a certainty right now. So what we budgeted for is really the worst-case scenario. If that can't happen, we have to have the ability to store that data and to back it up. And the backup is critical. You can't just have it. You have to be able to back it up in case something happens to the primary copy, right? So there you can kind of see between FY '24 and FY '25, once again, how there's a movement away from mostly that on-prem. So now you can see up in the top right, you see that Microsoft Cloud with Azure, oh, well, I probably shouldn't drop too many names, but the files and backups now becomes more cloud-based. And then the high dollar item that I mentioned before is going to be when you, in FY '25, Data Center 2 and Data Center 3. To the right of Data Center 2 and then all of Data Center 3, where you see backup and recovery, primary replacement, backup and recovery, secondary replacement. That's where the growth has to happen. So what we're doing is we're taking what you would see with that same name in FY '24 that we currently have, we're ripping that out. So we're not adding anything to it. So we're taking something that is insufficient and replacing it with something that can do the job. So that's the proposal where the bulk of that. Well, yeah.
Quiz at 4:30.
Yeah. So,
What you want to do is you want to be able to take the iCloud body camera stuff and put it into a server.
but and not have it all completely on premise, not completely here, but the goal is yes. The answer is yes, and the answer is, the big answer is to transfer it eventually to somebody else's servers, right, out there in the cloud. That's all the cloud is, right? And that's why if you look at FY '28, where you can see where this is building towards, FY '25 puts us in more of a hybrid. Some here, some there, right? Maybe 40-60, 50-50, we start ending, in that. But when you get to FY '28, what we're ultimately building towards is, you can see that there's very little left on premise. So remember how we've had to come to you for the facility UPS, the uninterruptible power supply in the basement here, and it's tens of thousands of dollars, right? Because we have to have so much uptime for the servers and all that. That goes away. So there should not be another iteration of a large UPS system in 400 High Street in the basement that has leaks, right? So you have that, but also we've had to spend money on cooling in the server room on the third floor, right? When we start reducing our, our infrastructure to where we don't need that extra cooling unit anymore, right? So what you're seeing is a transition from a lot of expenditures that are on site, again, to somebody else's infrastructure. So I mean, I can go back and touch on the highlights, but that's the bulk of it, is when you see things like in subscription hardware, you talk about cybersecurity authentication compliance, perimeter defense, the security awareness training you took care of last week. But, and then IT services, you see body camera footage, well, and then also down here in capital expenditures, just the systems that I'm talking about for the backup of all that extra data, that spans all three of those. So that's really that's why I was hoping that this would make it a little less confusing, because it's not like a line item video where you could take one of these and say, well, we can do without one. The problem is if you go this route, you have to do all three of them. They all work hand in hand. There's licensing, there's capital, the machines themselves, their support. The one other, I think, issue of note is KentCounty.com, right? To do a reboot of the website. It's been 9 years, 10 years? It's been a long time.
It's been longer than I've been here because it had been redone just before I came here.
So it's due for a reboot, right? And
It was 2015.
so we're looking to also, again, transfer where we're hosting it to a different cloud-based service. But also, there's a couple of layers of security we can add to this. Remember last week I came to you for that security awareness training? One of the issues we have is phishing, right? You know, where the attack comes in through email, right? So one of the ways they get that is by scraping email addresses off of websites. And there's modules we can put into place that sort of hide that information from those scrapers where they can't grab it as easily, right? And so that's the service we're looking to that's why we're looking to transfer our web services over to this hosted platform. The other thing it's going to do is this: there's a ton of data out there that's unnecessary. So we have a lot of pages out there that, no fault to anybody, it's just over the years you add another page, you add another page. You end up with thousands and thousands of data that's just unnecessary. What these services do is they help us flip it within about a 6-month period. Best case scenario, right? So we call all those pages that are unnecessary, all those other opportunities for bad guys, right? You know, we get rid of that, right? And then we put it on a hosted platform that also enhances our cybersecurity posture, which I talked about last year. We talked about defense in depth or layered defense. So now you have this out here where you have our cybersecurity awareness training. You also have a hosted platform with built-in cybersecurity features, right? So they work hand in hand, right? So maybe this one doesn't get everything, but then this training over here tells our people if something does get through, this is how you're supposed to respond to it. So it's more like, you know, catching kind of a waterfall. You want to have enough of those where the chances of something getting through are slim to none. That's the goal. So the bad news is I'm back for more this year. But it was unforeseen. We did not anticipate what the body camera footage would do. And that's the bulk of our increase.
I think it's important to note that if the state's attorney's office gets a case, they're not just getting the body cam footage from the sheriff's office. They may be getting it from Chestertown Police Department. They may be getting it from the Maryland State Troopers. So it's more than just what we have access to on our own, within our own little sphere.
And
And that's, the 128 is
the bulk of that
that's
is.
the bulk of that, what you
Yes.
just explained.
And depending on how this scenario unfolds, again, with them getting access possibly to incumbent services, that may shift. So then you may see a lessening of the burden for the capital expenditures and a shift of that over to services. And I can explain that as that develops. But what we wanted to put in front of you is kind of the worst case scenario, is there is no progress and we have to do this on our own. So one would hope between now and when you have to make your final decision, this evolves.
One would hope.
One would hope.
State of Maryland, the gift that keeps on giving, or taking, or whatever you want to call it.
It's one of those unforeseen.
Mandate, so
Right, that's
By-
exactly, right.
by FY '25.
Yeah.
It's one of those unforeseen issues that.
Well, right, it
Exactly.
started here, now we're here.
Unintended
Right.
consequences.
Unintended consequence, exactly. And they did I would say that they've done a very good job as far as the sheriff's office is concerned, but then these sort of ancillary issues that arise from, you know, who needs access to what, how long do you have to keep it? And, I mean, kudos to state's attorney's staff. They are doing their best to, when they no longer need the data, they destroy it. So, but again, it's like turning dials where, you know, we're offloading data that we don't think is quite necessary on a day-to-day basis. They're destroying it as fast as they can, but it's coming in so fast. And at this rate, it would be irresponsible not to anticipate an even faster rate of growth.
All right,
So, sorry.
that's okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thought you were done.
Me too.
She barely began.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So our Parks and Rec budget request, for summary by categories. You can see where salaries, we're asking for an 8.3% increase. The reason why I say, quote that is because we're actually asking for, under personnel, under highlights, one of our positions to be reclassified from a camp counselor to a camp director. And then we're also asking for seasonal salary increases for our aquatic staff and our directors. for aquatic staff, for our head guards and our assistant aquatics coordinator. They have more responsibilities. They have to do all the training and the certifications. The kids actually have to pay for their certifications. Us as a county doesn't pay for that, so that's an added cost to them before we even hire them. And the directors for each of our either camps or after school, they are the front line basically between the kids, the parents, and us as Parks and Recreation. So that's my reasoning for asking for increase for those proposed seasonal salaries.
There's detail on that on page 4.
Yes. As far as operational, so recreational supplies, we're asking for an increase of $4,886. We've taken on a couple different programs this year. We took on indoor soccer. And then we've also added a indoor volleyball league this year. Instructors, as far as softball and volleyball officials, of course, everyone's wanting an increase in their pay. So they have, next year, they've let us know that there will be an increase in each of those with the officials. And then we want to offer more arts and crafts workshops, some sports clinics, and some CPR classes. Credit card processing fee, that's our online fee that we use through our ActiveNet system, which is used for when everyone registers. I hate to say increase is a good thing, but this is a good thing because that just means that we are having more people that are coming in, signing up for our programs and using our programs and paying it with credit cards, so therefore that's an increase. As far as highlights with the capital budget, we were this year under budget for our pool plastering. I was over there talking to Jeannie during lunch, and we have about 17,000 that is still in that budget. So I'd like to, hopefully with the next meeting or two, propose a couple of these capital projects if I can go ahead and spend them out of that budget this year. So, but that will.
That's the way to do it.
Yep. So I will bring that to you guys probably at the next commissioners meeting.
Which ones are you talking about?
I'd like to do the flooring for our kitchen, our computer room, and our kids' room flooring. And then the other things that are needed right away, I would like to do our pool furniture at both of our pools. So if that happens, I will just leave with at the community center for a commercial grade electric exercise equipment, which is basically on a rotating basis that we just need to replace one of our pieces of equipment. We're looking for ActiveNet data card printers. We need 2 of those so that we're able to have them at each of our pool locations. Right now, we are definitely 1 short. We're asking for basketball adjustable rims. Since we've combined with Queen Anne's County Parks and Rec, for the younger kids, which is age 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, the rim is lowered. We do not have adjustable rims at any of our school locations or at the community center. So these will be attached to our rims, and we'll be able to lower them for the kids so that they're able to run full court. Right now, we run them half court because that's the only ones we have adjustable at the community center. But then they'll be able to run full court. So for 6 and 7-year-olds, a regular rim is 10. 6 and 7s goes down to 8 foot, and 8 and 9-year-olds shoot at a 9-foot basket.
Would this be every facility or just?
No, just at the community center, and then we'll make sure that the kids practice there and their games are there, yeah. So this is just at the community center. And then the pool front, so we have the Wharton Park book walk, story walk. We're going to estimate about $7,000 donation of time and material. We have had, that product is already been donated. So we will be making sure that that story walk will be going up shortly at Wharton Park.
And that's in collaboration with the library.
It's in collaboration with the library, yes. And in honor of that, I would like to bring the individuals who donated that to a commissioners meeting and honor them as well in the future. Community center, last year was put in for a pool replacement slide. So I just re-put that in for this year. And then our concession stand, we need a commercial freezer, because our freezer did go up the end of last year, but we were able to make it through the season because it was towards the latter end of the season.
So the pool slide. What's the current condition of the one we have?
The current condition of the one we have,
If I remember last year, we were concerned about how it empties into the pool or.
yeah, so it's basically how it throws the kids into the pool. So there's really, I mean, as far as the structure of the slide, we could get away with another year of that. We were just looking at it more of like a safety concern. Our lifeguards are well aware that that's what that slide does. And whenever they're up there guarding in their areas that they know, they really pay attention to that slide and how the kids come off of the slide. We do a lot of intensive training with them to make sure that they're aware that that's going to actually happen, so.
But I mean, as far as the condition,
As far as the condition of it, we could probably get another year or two out of it.
is there a way to move it so it doesn't, or anything that we could do construction-wise to make it safer?
I'm not totally sure about that answer, but I can definitely ask our pool management guy that comes and opens our pool and see what he says. Absolutely.
I know I've said it and I'll say it again, but every time I go out there, I'm amazed at how well it's taken care of.
Thank you.
That facility. Looks like it's brand new for the most part.
And it's what, 11 years old, 12 years old now?
I think,
13 or 14.
yeah, it's in the teens, I think. But it's very, very well taken care of.
Thank you. That's my staff. They do a
Yeah.
wonderful job for me.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
That's a good thing.
All right. Moving
At
on.
the park, I mean, you're not done.
I'm done, sorry.
I got you.
Program open space, is that correct? Program open space, there is still some money in there for program open space that we had not spent, that we're working on spending down. As far as in the highlights with the capital, there's Betterton Beach, the replacement of the boardwalk. There's still the Still Pond Park coming up with the design service, and then Wharton Park, we're working on the ball field enhancements, and then at Toll Park, we're working on the lower ball field with benches, and then we're also working on at Toll Park, the restroom and the pavilion design. So those are all ones that have actually been approved, but we haven't quite gotten to them to work with them to get any production going with those, but we will work with those.
What is that Still Pond Park? I mean, that's design, is that?
So Still
just
Pond,
to
Still Pond
design?
Park design was basically to get like a consultant in there to design that park. I think that was prior to me becoming director, if I remember that correctly. So that was still on, for the PSO.
Are you talking about the Coast Guard station?
Yes, yes. And then projected this year in our capital budget for PSO is our Wharton Park basketball court renovations, which will be $27,500, which will be the part that the county has to pay for, and the other is, goes through program open space through DNR.
The replacement of the boardwalk, I know we've talked about it, but we haven't done that yet.
As far as I know, we have not, correct, Dan?
No,
Boardwalk?
it is in design, and during the course of design, because of cost increases, we've anticipated, we've had to revisit some of the structural components and revise some of the designs. It was our intent to have that constructed this year. I think realistically, the construction will occur early calendar year '25. As we look to redesign and value engineer to still provide
And that's basically going from, is it wood now and they're going to that composite material?
No, it's composite now.
The intent would be to have a stamped concrete walkway that
Okay.
would have the look and feel of wood, even with the grains and the stamp, but concrete, the durability of concrete, and make it, the last project any of us see over there. So, last night.
Very good.
Under your operating, it says consulting fees. I'm not sure what I don't know what LPPRP means.
All right, so once every 5 years, we have to do a land preservation, parks and recreation plan, which is about that thick.
It's
But
required.
yeah, it's required. But prior to that, every year, they also assist us with the annual report. So, what was it, a couple weeks ago, I came in and did my annual report. They assist us with putting all the report together as well, but yeah.
I just didn't know what the,
And that's 100% paid for, so the county doesn't pay anything for that.
And that's been a godsend since
Yes.
we've had them on board, because it used to be that where it was a rush right at the last minute before that report was due, and/or submitted late.
Yes.
Now they help us a little bit at a time, so it's not a big chunk right before the due date.
And then LPP, local park and playground. This program right here is no longer funded by DNR. Right now, we are currently working on completing these projects, which was 100% funded. We're working on the restrooms at Wharton Park, the dugouts at Wharton Park, and some bleachers at Wharton Park. And then at Betterton, it would be replacing the boardwalk and putting some bleachers or benches there at Betterton Beach as well. With this, we're also working to get some sensory panels put out too. We had a request from a couple parents, some sensory panels put out at Wharton Park at the playground, along with putting benches around the walking trail. So that individuals, if they're not able to walk the whole trail, they'll have an opportunity to sit down on a bench and continue to walk the trail if they would like to. So that should be completed
Yes.
relatively soon.
Yes. Yeah, everything mentioned with the exception of Betterton Beach, we
Right.
expect will go fairly quickly.
Very good.
Anyone have any questions?
keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
This year, Planning and Zoning, good afternoon all. This year, Planning and Zoning is presenting a maintenance budget, so there's actually a slight decrease in operating based on sort of that last bit of encumbered funds for the land use ordinance being released. I do want to thank you all.
Decrease? You said a decrease or?
Yeah, there's a slight decrease, yeah.
Next.
in overall.
Next.
So,
I'm teasing.
As part of the budget, I did want to thank you all for earlier this year approving the upgrade to associate planner. Our new associate planner whom you all met is here, and really it's wonderful to be at full capacity. I think since I started here, that's only happened for a handful of months, so it's really great. We're able to get a lot done. There were a few things that I was going to talk about, but things kind of got moved around, which is great. We had talked a long time ago about putting the land use ordinance into the general code, and I think that's going to be proposed under your all's budget, which is wonderful. The GIS 3-year contract, which you approved, we're in the middle year, and there's a little dip in how the pricing works, so that also counts for some of the lower operating budget. It's my understanding that our 97,000-mile 2015 Jeep is probably going to be replaced by a leased vehicle, but that occurs in a different part of the budget, so it's my understanding.
Yeah, it just hasn't been entered into the budget yet for
Right,
this year.
so-
We're still waiting pricing.
Okay. And I think the one thing I wanted to add in general is just to voice my support for the idea of refunding the grants manager position. I think that in a lot of places, that position is really important to garnering essentially revenue. I mean, you have to have projects, specific projects that get funding, but it can pay for a lot of things, and often that position pays for itself many, many times over based on the grants received. So I know you all are considering a lot of things and have to weigh a lot of options.
I think it's being advertised all, isn't it?
No, it was cut out of last year's budget, so we would like to, we're gonna request, you'll hear in a few minutes, that we would like to have it reinstated.
So, and maybe the only small details is we are asking for money for the Maryland Environmental Services. With all the transitions DPW is going with, we've sort of came up with a little agreement for a little while. Planning and zoning is going to go back to the stormwater management review by MES, so that DPW has chance, specifically Dan, to hire someone and fill that position. And I think that's it. We have no capital plan for this year. So,
Except the vehicle.
except for the
They say,
vehicle.
yeah.
Right.
Well, there's that.
Although that's a lease, so I don't know if that's capital. It's capital.
It gets rolled up.
It gets rolled up. Okay. It is capital, yes. All righty. No
All right.
questions? All righty. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Rosemary.
Good afternoon. How's it feeling? Still awake? I'm like right at that like sugar low part of the afternoon.
Somebody bring up the cookies.
My budget isn't too crazy. You'll see on the first page with the main summary, an overall 12% drop from last year, or this current year. And then the second page shows you the increases and decreases by funding source. So my office is always trying to braid and blend all these different sources to make things work. And so we see a drop from the governor's office. It still says crime prevention. We're anticipating that next year it'll say Governor's Office of Children again. But that main drop was because we got a one-time grant for Safe Summers that you remember we did a lot of extra activities with teenagers and safe spaces and whatnot. And the other grants, we had acquired an award from the Health Department last year. I don't know if you remember, but since we had a vacancy at the time, that was cut from my budget, and I was able to negotiate with the Health Department and the state, and so I was able to still hire someone. It's just moved a lot of pieces around. But ultimately, the Health Department did not come through with those dollars. They thought it was kind of a confusing thing with the Healthy Families Program. The funds are there, Healthy Families Program is okay, but the way that money was moving is not happening that way anymore. I don't know if that makes any sense. And then I am asking for a increase of about $20,000 from the county, and I'll explain more about that in a sec. So this explains it again a little bit. Since we have a new person in the local care team, that expense has gone down a little bit from FY24. The Safe Summer Grant was a one-time grant. The Health Department grant is not happening will not continue. And then for an increase of about $20,000 total from the county, most of that would go to fund 28% of the Beyond Your Mental program for high school students. And then 1,300 would stay for like operating expenses within my office.
Rosie, I know you've explained the Beyond Your Mental to the commissioners before, but can you, in 2 sentences?
It's a program that the LMB is using to address teen mental health. And we had a year-long process for the youth to design a program that they would like to see in their community that would help bolster mental health. And they designed a cross-age peer mentoring program. So high school seniors and juniors will mentor 8th graders and 9th graders. And they're super excited about it. I'm pretty excited about it too.
And FY '25 is the full implementation.
Yes, we've done planning, piloting, and next year, or FY '25 will be implementation. And so the next page just goes in a little bit more detail about each of those programs. So 30% of my budget, or I don't know if that's the exact percentage, goes towards salaries, operations, community support, some activities and trainings. And then we have 3 funded programs. The first is Healthy Families, a home visiting program. The second is the after-school program for the middle school. That's implemented by Menary's Dream Alliance. And the third program is the mentoring program with the high schoolers. So Healthy Families has been also, it shows as level funded. That program is basically operating at the same standard as before. They're starting to receive more fundings from the feds and the state through the maternal, infant, early childhood home visiting program. Kent County didn't used to be eligible for those funds based on our demographics, and just past year we've now become eligible, so they're receiving an extra support from the feds, so that allows the LMB to kind of start gradually pulling away our contribution. But they have 2 home visitors still, so they're doing well. But that's my whole budget right now. I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm also waiting for the session to end to see if there seems to be some optimism that we'll get more funding through the supplemental budget, which might mean more conversations with my board about other programming and other activities we want to pursue.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ed.
All right. No other questions?
So when you pursue, maybe one of these grants, do you do it yourself or do you contract it out?
The current grants that we have are all done in-house. The only time we contract out for help is around some of our community planning processes. It's good to have a facilitator to help us really do that systematically. If we try to do it in-house, it just becomes overwhelming.
Most of the money that comes into the LMB is in a big chunk from the Governor's Office of Children, or whatever you want to call it right now. So there's a huge application for that with a lot of pieces and parts, and that goes in. Rosie and her team do that exclusively. The MSDE portion of the Healthy Families, that's kind of,
They keep changing that now. It had been the same application every year. It was very kind of like I could do it
was
in my
almost, yeah, dust
sleep.
off the last one and resubmit type of thing.
But there was talk about making it competitive. They've added more reporting. So when we had a grants manager, I was relying on her to help me submit reports to the grants management system, and that was a huge help. And it was also really good to have just someone that could read my drafts and tell me if I needed to, add more information, and or even being able to pull in information that I didn't have on hand. So since I've been doing it for 8 years, I didn't, delegate it entirely to the grants manager, but it was certainly helpful to have, it be more of a team process than just a Rosie process, the board support. And the LMB hasn't really pursued a lot of extra grants in the past few years. We've maybe done 1 or 2 here and there, but we haven't
small
really
ones.
felt the capacity to really go after competitive grants.
Yeah, right, you're not breaking into whole new markets type of thing, starting from scratch.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a little different than some of the other departments.
yeah. So we are also in support of rehiring the grants
I saw
manager
your
position.
email. I saw everybody's email, actually.
Oh, good.
And I think, it is a way to increase revenue for the county.
Yeah.
Instead of using, well, it's still taxpayer money probably coming in, but it's not just Kent County's taxpayer money.
In the state of Maryland, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, they did pass legislation that says if you're writing a grant, even if it's a grant that's just going to the governor's office for children or another area, you are by law allowed to ask for a certain, under 10% for indirect costs. And so if we had a grants manager that could really align that funding request across all of our grants, all of those little 10% would come together and support that salary or more. But right now, since all of our departments are doing our grants kind of in silos, and we don't have visibility of what other folks are applying for and how it's working and how the budgets are being developed, I feel like a grants manager could really bring that together so that it becomes self-sustaining.
I think you're right.
Cool.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so starting with economic and tourism development. By category, you can see the biggest increase there is for a request for a position and benefits that go along with that. So on the highlights page, I'll go through those. Talking about the housing and transportation coordinator position. That was a position that was in the budget, previously grant funded, and was not funded last year, but the position remains. I will say in regards to that, we would need a clear focus and directive of what that position, from the county commissioners. We've created a job description, and it's attached. We would appreciate any input from all the stakeholders, planning, housing and zoning, local management board, public works, because that position would not solely be, I don't have all the knowledge that I need to, while I can manage that person, I would need to collaborate with other departments. It comes down to, I won't say much about it because you've got lots of information in your packet, but it comes down to opportunities versus resources. And there's lots of momentum in regards to housing and transportation right now at the state level and at the federal level. And to be able to keep up with even all those meetings, to stay informed is virtually impossible with everything else on current staff's plates. The third thing I want to mention is that, additional positions, not just this position, but there are additional costs associated when we add positions, if approved. So, like office space in general, and then just desk, phone, travel, training, memberships, all of that stuff. Pat and I did have a brief discussion about how to fund those. Do we put something into the budget when we get closer to knowing what positions will be approved? Or, since we know that the budget starts July 1, it's not going to be filled right away, do you use that funding that's saved while you were filling the position to get that person what they need to do their job? So just something to think about as we go through. Under the operating, other advertising was the biggest increase, and that was basically for photography and video creation. We needed to refresh the photo library and video assets. We are utilizing local photographers and videographers. We've worked with Shore Studios, Andover Media, Delmarva Craft, and they've created content and TV ads for us. We also this past year, we purchased some photos from J.P. Henry to use in our ads as well as in the Visitor's Guide refresh. And we've reached out to probably 8 other local photographers as well that we've seen their work to see if they would be interested in allowing us to use those photos. Software subscriptions. Form Builder was previously grant-funded, and it was utilized for grant applications. As you know, there was a period of time where we were doing lots of grants. I'm not even going to say the word why. But we realized we needed a way to receive those grant applications and be able to process them efficiently. And since then, there have been state programs where businesses could apply directly to the state for grants. Now they're pushing it down to the county has to apply for the funding, and then the money will be sub-granted out. So it's important that we're still able to do that, in addition to the ag grant that we do through the Upper Shore Regional Council and/or any other programs we would want to run. And then HubSpot, there was an increase in that too. And that is due to building the marketing contacts for communications through the monthly newsletters as well as for special announcements. So the more marketing contacts you have in there, the more money you obviously have to pay to maintain that. And we do go through and clean it out periodically to get rid of any bad email addresses or hard bounces, or even people that are not actively viewing the material. Economic and Tourism Development Commission, not all members in FY '24 attended all meetings. That's why you see a difference. And in previous years, we had a few members that opted out of payments, but that's not the case this coming year, and we just have to budget for what we think the payments will be. Under the vehicle services, you'll see an increase there, and a vehicle was transferred from Kent County Detention Center to our department in the second quarter of FY '24. So you'll just see that basically some expenses have moved around. And then because when you look at travel, meals, and lodging, you'll see that it's about the same for vehicle services, and that where they balance out. Education increased in-person meetings, past the bad word, and increases in cost to conferences and events. So, and then another thing to note, not so much on this page, but when you're looking through the details in the budget, you'll see lots of notes, but the MACO budget was also moved to our department in FY '24, which is where it belongs. So that was another change that you'll see some fluctuations there. Any questions about the highlights or this page at all? The KRM entrance was just pulled over from FY '24. That's that Rural Maryland Economic Development Fund grant. We are still working on that project, and I can certainly share an update with any of you at any time about that.
But you're expecting an update like on April 19th or?
That is correct. I'm expecting some confirmation if the project is moving forward by April 19th.
If it's not,
I did reach out. Yes,
if it's not going to move forward,
correct.
there's the Upper Shore Regional Council dollars along with the county allocation that will be available for other projects,
That's my understanding.
potentially.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then we go to the hot desk budget, and you'll see there was an increase of 16% there overall. But looking at the budget highlights, I think it pretty much says it. There was a decrease in the hot desk rental revenue and an increase in the operating expenses, which is the cleaning services that we moved from in-house to have it with our janitorial services for the county. Just this afternoon, while Scott was speaking, I got an email, so we will be able to raise that revenue Pat, by $4,200. They are going to keep one of the offices. So that's the expectation. And, but these are month-to-month memberships, not just with the offices, but with the use of the hot desk as well. So it could change at any time. But what I did have notes and they were up front, so just wanted to remind everyone that it was established in 2017 with the Eastern Shore Entrepreneurship Center. This will be the third year that we have operated the Chestertown Hot Desk, and the counties receive the revenues, the membership revenues. But keep in mind that co-working incubator space was not established to make money. It provides an economic development service to the ecosystem community, business startups, and entrepreneurs. In FY '24, finance separated the account codes for Hot Desk. And this is the best method because it allows us to see all the revenues and all the expenses in one place. And now we have 2 years of history going forward with that. So, are there any questions about that?
I think so.
Okay. I did have a couple of notes about the allocations, and I haven't seen the full list yet, so, but these are the three that I know about that I want to make sure that they're kind of on our radar. The Upper Shore Regional Council obviously always asks for the $12,000, which is the county contribution for being part of the Upper Shore Regional Council. In addition, I believe they asked for $30,000 was the supposed request. You don't remember? Okay.
I have to go, but there's
That's
so
okay.
many.
That additional funding that they're asking for is for the match for the Ag Grant Program. And in addition to that, and the reason we asked for 30,000 opposed to 15 or 20 that we had asked for the year before is we'd like to have opportunities for other small businesses to participate in a grant program. So that's the consideration there with that request. The Small Business Development Center sends in a request for $6,000 each year, and I do want to share that we do have 2 very engaged mentors there, that services are offered for free to any business startup, entrepreneur, even a current business who needs some assistance with a specific issue, whether it's marketing, financial projections, and they are very engaged, and it's a huge service for us. They'll even help someone develop a business plan. So I just wanted to share support for that. The Greater Rock Hall Business Association, the $20,000 for transportation, this replaces the previous request for Delmarva Craft. So even though it's new for Greater Rock Hall Business Association, it's still for that transportation shuttle. We have been working with them as well as the town and other stakeholders on funding it for this year to try to get them enough funding to get them started. But Rock Hall has established an economic development committee that has a transportation subcommittee that is working on a long-term solution. So, hopefully in a year or two, we won't be coming back asking for the commissioners to fund this initiative. So that is the hope. Any questions on those?
Not right now.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I just have a couple of quick comments about salary increases. I'd love a 6% salary increase. But I've been with the county now for 13 years, and we've given across-the-board raises. And I understand there's challenges in doing it differently, but I just have a few thoughts. And we've done that before as percentages. We've done it by dollar value as well. But, I think given the department heads some input into how the funds are distributed within their department, to allow us to pay for the performance and contribution that that person makes to the department and/or the county would be worthwhile. I'd also say that attraction is more expensive than, retention. Attraction is more expensive than retention. One source cites it's about 1.5 to 2 times the salary to replace an employee. This is just something I've thought about over the years, raising the bottom, getting rid of grades 1 or 2. I specifically look at some of the challenges with the MEO 1 positions and the vacancies discussed earlier. Benefits are important, and I think we benefits are great. We have great benefits, but people can't pay their bills with benefits. So I think it's really important that we raise that bottom. And I do think this is directly related to economic development, as it increases the median household income for the county, and it also raises salaries throughout the county. So it's just something to keep in mind. And, rather than a percentage, a dollar amount may be a better way. I know there's pros and cons with both, but I feel like, and cutting my nose off to spite my face, but those of us at the higher salary level get a higher increase, and there might be someone at the lower end that actually deserves more. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as a follow-up to what you just said, I also agree with what you just put out there. The problem we have, and the problem that the county could face, is that I would like to think that all department heads do the proper documentation and evaluation of their employees, but sometimes that doesn't always happen as good as it should happen. And in order to justify certain percentages given to certain people and certain percentages given to other folks, we've got to be able to justify that. So to me, I think it would be a very worthy conversation at one of your monthly staff meetings. I'm not saying performance evaluations or whatever, but I mean, everyone's got to be able to justify why they feel Sally or Johnny or, whatever they get, they need to be able to justify it in black and white, writing it down. And that doesn't always happen. And that's a timely process on the supervisors and the department heads, but it's a fair process if it's done right. And I hear what you're saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's basically what happens with across the board. So if you all can figure it out, I think we'd be open to listening to it.
It's impossible.
I know it's impossible.
I bet.
Can
I
be
said that the
impossible.
first day I was sitting here, I think. I just don't do it, but I don't.
Impossible.
Yeah.
I like to
Very
think
simple,
nothing is
very-
Personal
impossible.
feelings and all that can't come into it. It's got to be a fair process. Pat, you and I have talked about that a lot of times.
We have, and, we've tried pay for performance. Over the years,
I know.
we've implemented, there's pros and cons to every method and struggles with all of them, so.
Good
How are you?
afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Everybody hanging in there?
so far.
You need a cookie?
Getting close. Okay, so you can see that our budget, we're receiving flat funding this year again from Maryland Family Network. We've been flat funded since we've been open. And there's a committee working on that. We're hoping that will change. But the biggest change in our budget this year is a request for an increase in benefits. Our operating costs are going to go down a little bit despite the prices of everything going up. I was able to trim some of that. And if you flip over to, let's see, our highlights, there's a little bit of an explanation there for the big request. I think it's 82% for benefits. This is my third time giving this spiel, so I know that you guys have heard it before, and I don't envy your position at all. I know that everybody who has presented to you today and the presentations you're going to hear, they're all important, all of them. I think it's very wonderful to work for the county. I like my job. I like, being a part of the county government. But when I look at my staff, sometimes it's hard. I think it's hard for them to feel that way. And it's because I'm the only full-time person in the department. We have, out of 7 people, we've had 3 vacancies most of the year. Someone was on maternity leave. She's back. We just filled one of our vacancies and we have one other vacancy. So
all year, we've been asking people to do more with less. And that's pretty much, how this field goes. People know that. But with having staff members who are working 35 hours a week, they're so close to full-time, but the benefits are not affordable to them. So while benefits don't pay your bills, benefits are important. I'm asking these two, I know it's about the position and not the person in the position, but I'm asking these people to, fill in the gaps for people who aren't here. I'm having to fill in for them filling in. So, it's, sometimes we feel like we're on a hamster wheel, and I feel like it's just not fair that they are working 35 hours and aren't entitled to the full-time benefits at an affordable rate. I don't know how else to impress upon you how important this is for my department for retention. We have good employees in those positions right now. One has been there for 8 years since we opened. One has been there for 3 years. If I have to fill those positions, I'm going to be starting all over, and it's going to be really hard to fill them if they're not offered full-time status with benefits. So it's hurting morale. It's going to hurt us. Jamie just talked about how important retention is, and especially in this situation, I've started with this staff. I've grown this staff. They've been through so much training. We've invested a lot in them, and we need to keep them. And we need to have them sitting here saying what I just said to you. I like working for Kent County. I love my job. I love who I work for. I want them to be able to say that too. Also, the education levels that are required for those positions. The service coordinator position requires a master's in social work, so a licensed social worker. And the other one requires at least a bachelor's. The incumbent right now in that position has a PhD. They could easily go somewhere else. We've lost 2 staff in the past to the school system for lower pay, but health insurance. So, and then I'd just like to flip to the next page and just remind you of some of our service highlights. We are, constantly developing new programs, kind of following the lead of the county residents on what they need when it comes to parenting and services for families with children under 5. Our programs are designed to prevent child abuse and neglect. We offer programs in the center, in the community, and in homes. We have in-person mental health for parents and children, a mental health person. We do service linking, referrals, and support with navigating community resources for crisis needs and things like that. We do parenting education. Some of that is we work with social services to do parenting education for families who are reuniting or families who are receiving in-home services. We work with infants and toddlers. Parent leadership is a big part of our program, and we have a very high-quality early childhood education program that focuses on school readiness and also educates parents on how to advocate for their children and how to start school with the best start possible for the whole family, not just for the child. There's also some of our partners listed here. So we work with a lot of community agencies. I think Kent Family Center is a very important spoke in that big wheel. There are a lot of services for children and families here, and they all work really well together. And we really enjoy being a part of that. And, part of this staff increase will give me more time to focus on nurturing those relationships and working with those partners. And back to the grant conversation, having a grant person will be great, but I also need the staff to be able to implement new grants. So I manage the grants that we have. I write the MFN grant every year, and I would keep that responsibility. But if we did have a grant person, our department could do so much more for the county. We'd love to work with the detention center a little bit more. We've done that in the past. I'd love to provide parenting classes for the high school students at the high school. So you can see where a grant manager would be helpful in that, but also, like I said, the staff. I need to have the staff to be able to do it. Any questions?
Not right now. I'm okay. Johnny?
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
If anybody else wants a cookie, follow Rosie's lead. Move him a little closer, see if that works.
Mohammed won't go to the moon.
So I guess we have a few items to cover here. Okay. I think in looking at the summary, and you see salary, benefits, operating expenses, I think a couple of points to make to everyone is that the benefit expenses, and I know there's another tab about insurances, but the 10% that's been plugged in is strictly today's estimate. We won't have final numbers from our carriers till sometime this month to know exactly what kind of situation we're going to be in. They generally felt that 10% was a reasonable estimate. And I wanted to mention that one because that one links directly to salary increases for FY25. As you saw, Pat had bookmarked 6%. And I think based on some information that we've seen, what our competitors are going to be doing, that's a reasonable number. But I would like to point out, last year, it was split into two increases, 4 and 2. And I want to recommend not doing that this year. A couple of reasons. First off, if the benefits do go up by 10%, what we ran into last year was a change in our structure so that folks with individual coverage started paying for some of their insurance. So they kind of got the double whammy of paying for insurance and then 4% of the increase, some of whom actually took a pay cut, a net cut out of it. It's hard to estimate exactly how that'll play out because it's case by case, how much insurance people are carrying, what their tax bracket is, all those kinds of good things. But what we do know is that if we split it into two parts, we run the risk again of having people get little to no nominal kinds of increases. Hi, Jen.
Hi, sorry.
No, it's okay. I asked Jen to come join us because she did a lot of work on the budget, especially since she'll correct anything that I say dumb here today. So splitting it, puts us at risk another year of having that happen. The other problem with splitting the salary increase, we already know from some survey information we've seen, is that we're certainly not in the top tier of what we're paying for positions. If we don't fund the full increase in July, it hurts us in recruitment and it hurts us in retention. We're not as competitive as we are with the other folks trying to hire the same folks as we. You've heard Dan talk about the MEOs, and certainly you all have talked about that position. In addition, we run the risk of losing people that we've already got and have already invested in because they can do better going somewhere else. So, and then as an aside, operationally, it was very challenging to split the increases and make sure that the monies came out correctly and that the message was what was intended. So wanted to kind of bookmark that one for your consideration going forward. The other item, and I guess really if we go to the highlights page, it's probably as big an item as consideration. The first item on the list, countrywide training. I was kind of happy to hear Jamie talking about training and hear Commissioner Price talk about evaluations and the importance of how well they can be done. Interestingly enough, in most organizations, a training budget is one of the first ones that gets cut in lieu of operational needs. And it's a penny wise, pound foolish sort of thing. The better you train your people, the better responses, better productivity you get. We haven't really undertaken, that I can find here, to do much in the way of, other than certain operational kinds of training, true leadership training, or to prepare for the next group of leaders that'll come down the pike. As Shelley and I were talking about this topic, that's where the idea of a strong leadership training program came up, and that's why you see of the $33,000 in the highlights here, 30,000 of it is a training program that can very much tie into what Jamie and what Commissioner Price were talking about in terms of a performance management system and ultimately a pay performance system. But you can't do that if your leaders aren't really trained and skilled at evaluating performance and assessing how everybody in their department is doing. And then if you want to go take the leap from there to a compensation system that's not a straight line, everybody gets the same percentage or everybody gets the same flat dollar amount, that's when you can do that kind of thing. I'll point out to you that it's not as simple as, you do it that way, you give the director autonomy to do that, because you still have a budget to live with inside. And that's generally what I've done in the past, there's been oversight generally out of HR to ensure that the budget was kept and that the top 10% of the performers were compensated the way the top 10% of performers should be compensated. It certainly can be done. We've talked before about percentage increases versus flat rate increases, and my personal opinion, I'm not a fan of flat rate increases. I don't think it sends the message that you want to send if you're really trying to get to pay per performance. Carrying that down a little bit.
Jim, before you move on from the
Yes, sir.
30,000.
Yep.
For the leadership training, do you have a vendor that you're looking at maybe to provide that training or some software or?
We've talked to a vendor.
Legit offers an awful lot of leadership programs. Free.
They do. This would be way more targeted and way more person by person of the leadership team to really dive into what does that individual need for the next step or to be more skilled at where they are. You have a great leadership team.
Executive coaching. was
Executive
the term.
coaching,
So
yeah.
it's very personalized, and then it pulls the whole team together.
Yeah. We have a good leadership team here, there's no doubt that you do. They're great operational folks. But from what I can see and tell, we haven't really invested in developing that group and realize, at least in my opinion, that kind of training has a very important trickle-down effect. The better your leaders are trained, the better they have the opportunity to train that next group. You need succession planning here, and we haven't really done that. We got lucky, quite frankly, when Mike decided to retire, that Dan was in the wings. But that cost you $12,000 to a search firm. We're hoping not to spend that kind of money this year. In fact, we didn't even budget to spend that kind of money this year. And I'm happy to report that Dan mentioned we have 3 possible candidates for the deputy position. I just learned from Jen about 5 minutes ago, 2 of those 3 are scheduled for interviews next week.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to schedule the third one. Dan and I can chat about that.
But I'm happy to report that. And we're not spending $12,000 to a search firm.
Or 50,000.
Or 50.
For a superintendent.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
It is. And we're hoping not to do that. And one of the ways we haven't had to, we don't think we're going to have to worry about that is some of the changes that have happened in HR in the past 12 months. Bringing Jen on and creating a true 21st century social media recruitment process has enabled us to attract folks. But circling back to retention and recruitment, retention is always less expensive than recruiting, always. The more you invest in your people, the better off you're going to be. One consultant that I'm familiar with made the analogy that, and I think Dan can probably speak to this one, when you have a piece of equipment that's going bad, you spend the time and money to repair it, get as much useful life out of it as possible. You got to do the same thing with your people. You have to train them, you have to repair them, you have to make sure they're developed to get the, I don't make it sound cold, but to get the most useful life out of them as possible, because that's the investment you're making. Just like you make an investment in a couple $100,000 tractor. But in this case, it's the people, and the people are the ones that make the reputation for the organization. I'll get off my soapbox on the topic. A couple of the other items that you see here under the highlights, employee relations. I believe we had a great employee appreciation dinner this past December. I think it went very, very well. But we've all talked about, in fact, people here today have talked about the cost of food and the cost of everything going up. We're making some allowances to ensure that we can continue to run a good employee appreciation program. I'll skip down to membership. That one's in there because I'm a big believer in training and developing staff, so I'm doing that with my own staff. We eliminated a subscription last year in lieu of having a couple of us become members in a national organization that gives us way more information and availability of resources than reading a subscription. I'm doing that again this year by asking to make sure that my team can all join that national association and make use of the resources that are there. Next to last one down, Bamboo. With your permission, we installed the first HRIS that the county's ever had. Some of the expense was startup and development and getting it up and running. It's up and running, and we're finding more and more uses for it. I think the org charts that you have in your binders, thank you, Jen and Pat, came from that program. The price for this year went down some because the upfront cost to develop it is behind us. Now it's maintaining a program like that. I think if there's other items that I can throw out there for you, but I'll stop at that point and see if there's questions before there's a couple more sections to hit.
Any questions, gentlemen?
The Bamboo software program.
Mm-hmm.
What is the annual cost for the licenses for that?
It's this. It's six.
Because you're
I
showing.
think this year was. I think this year round numbers was
12,000
about
less.
17,000.
Okay.
About
Pat can pull it up.
I'm looking.
16 and change, 16.4 maybe, a number like that.
We moved it a number of times.
6, 3.
It got moved from one cost center to a different one as we were juggling some things around, but I think 16 and change.
16,679, second number from the bottom up there.
16.7, okay.
Software,
Oh, I see.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of small, but
I
yeah.
was looking at the highlight sheet.
Yeah,
It showed
Yeah.
a
down significantly from the first
decrease
year's
of $12,000.
log up, yeah. Yeah. Other questions on the first section?
We're good, I think.
I think you have a couple other tabs, one on insurance. And we've kind of covered this one as well. As you know, the expenses for FY '25 are still an estimated number at about a 10% increase. Although we are seeing that there's some potential for some savings. The membership credits, which I think is the next to last one that's there. We get membership credits through Legit and Benetcon. We won't know what that number is yet. They're still working on those final numbers, but I think that's an estimated number based on previous years. That helps. It's an offset of our expenses.
But you're guessing or estimating maybe a 10% increase from health insurance?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the health, welfare, health, vision, dental, workers' comp is estimated around that same number. Some of the other insurance programs like officers' liability coverage, things like that, we've seen on average about an 8.5% increase. There's 4 or 5 categories that are lumped into that. So, yeah, we're supposed to have more definitive numbers by, actually, I have a meeting later this week, and then we are supposed to get our more definitive numbers within a couple of more weeks to know exactly what we're going to get hit with. Tens, I've seen better, I've seen lots worse.
I've seen a lot worse. I've seen better too, but.
I'm not surprised. It's an experience-rated product. They're all experience-rated products. You have a really great year and you get a low when you have a bad year, or you have 1 or 2 claims that are super claims and you get clobbered. That's just the way insurance goes.
I think I remember, I don't know, it's been so long ago now, but before we went with Benetcon and them, I believe there was a period in time when I was here that the premium doubled in 5 or 6 years.
We had
yeah.
multiple years that were, we had multiple years that were close to 20%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm choking on the 20%.
I used to see those kind of numbers too.
I think the whole premium, and it's like, I don't know, 300,000 or was or something, but it doubled to like 600. It was just,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
Yeah,
about
yeah, I
5,
used to see
6
those kind of numbers too in the
5 or
space.
6 years,
Yep.
the premium itself doubled.
Yeah, you'd see, we were seeing for a stretch of 4 or 5 years at my last place where 20% a year was just normal. So
Yeah.
100% over the space of 5 years, it just was insane. And we had to do some creative things, as we did last year with some cost sharing, to offset some of that because we simply couldn't absorb 100% of those expenses. I'm not advocating for, something different, but I am advocating for trying to make sure that we don't
You don't
hit
want
the.
to change anything.
No, I'm not advocating for that this year. No. Are you sure we had so much fun last year? You sure you don't want to? You sure you don't want to do it again, John? We had a lot of fun last year.
No, in fact, my next question is, are we still at 90-10 for employees?
And 85-15.
Unless you would like to change something.
No,
I went, it's in at the status quo. If you would like to make a change, we can certainly calculate all
I guess we
options
could
for
have more
you.
conversation later on, but I mean, I think, I definitely don't want to change it for the worse, that's for sure, for the employees or the retirees.
Going into the budget, we're under the assumption that we're not changing that. It was such a big change last year. I certainly wouldn't advocate for it unless we absolutely have to
We're
do
gonna have to have
something.
somebody give Jen oxygen if you
Exactly.
talk about making a change to
They're
this thing.
changing.
I finally have all the retirees somewhat happy.
You do have them.
And I tell you,
I've got a lot of phone calls.
I'm going to relay the message because I've heard from a number of them. And they all said that they came to you and you did an outstanding job and were very pleasant. And within a few minutes, they were done and they appreciated it.
And I've had the same conversation, but I did reaffirm that, are you talking
I
about?
told them you must be talking about the wrong
Are
person.
you talking about Jen
Yeah.
White?
Yeah, that's what I.
Also known as Jen Horsey?
I'll point out they don't talk to me. They go to Jen. And I've gotten the same messages. I've gotten emails and comments from folks that,
I think folks are pretty
that's been happy, yeah.
Yeah, it was a rough, and it was a change for sure, but
It was.
the worst is behind us.
So that's really the information on the insurance budget. You see kind of where that's going. We've pretty much run straight forward through that. The general benefits, which is the last one, couple of observations on that one. On the highlights page, EAP is mentioned, and the reason why there's a savings there, what we learned for last year was that we were actually paying a third-party vendor to provide EAP services when we already had an EAP service through Cigna. So we stopped that contract. To a lesser amount, we were paying a vendor to handle unemployment claims, a couple $1,000s a year, and we learned that they had handled a total of 4 claims. So we eliminated that contract and brought that in-house into HR to try to tighten the belts a little bit. The Coors one, I honestly can't speak to that one. The last,
Pat's very familiar with that one, if you have
Yeah.
any questions.
if there's questions about that one, please talk to our CFO. She knows way more than I'd be afraid to know.
Maybe I missed this, Jim, but
Yes, sir.
the workers' compensation seems to be increasing by 83,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have an explanation on why that's?
No, it's an experience-rated product, just like all the others. I think we're using 10% as the, I
He
thought,
sent us a tentative quote.
was it more, I didn't remember the number on that one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Jen forwarded on to me. They sent a tentative quote, and, yeah, it's a rather large increase this year. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I'm not remembering that
Not
one.
necessarily because we've had a lot of claims.
I think it is.
We have had
probably
a lot
is.
of claims.
That's the
It
reason.
probably is.
Yeah,
And
we've had a
maybe
number
we-
this year.
Maybe we add a bullet to the report. One is number of claims last fiscal year, if we can get that easily, and then versus how many so far this fiscal year?
The
Something, some
metrics report.
benchmark.
Yeah, we'll certainly look at that. But yeah, it does seem like we've been hit a number of times.
There is a metric for that.
Yeah, we can do
Some type
that.
of training to, alleviate some of these claims potentially. Maybe we should think about that, but.
Oh, yeah. But yes.
All right,
Questions? Anything we can try to cover?
this is the first day of the budget. There may be very.
There's gonna be a lot of
There
questions.
will be
Moving forward.
questions.
First day of the budget, next to the last
But it
presenter
has
here.
been, and I assume you're the last one.
Now, Sandra,
Sandra, there is one item.
She's not gonna be long, but,
You're just gonna give Sandra whatever she asks for.
but I
right? That's how
tell
it
you,
works.
it's,
Not.
this day is really, it's always a good day to, you get a feel for the whole county. And I always said, when you don't know nothing about the county till you go through a budget process, and then you learn it a lot. So, you know.
Yeah, I got here at the end of February last year, and Jen got here in the middle of March, so this is the first really full budget process for us last year. Pat handheld me and Shelley handheld me all the way through the thing, and, I made a couple of minor contributions, and the whole rest of it was stuff that I, didn't know a lot about. We found some money to be able to do some things that you all gave us permission to do. One of the items that I know is going to come up as a topic at some point along the way here, because it's pretty much come up in every meeting I've had with staff, and it's on-call pay. We're not ready, obviously, in this conversation to dive into the subject, but I can tell you that the staff who are scheduled to do on-call, and it's predominantly Public Works staff and the Sheriff's Department, are keenly interested in talking about that subject and asking us to visit it.
Because I wanted to make it, one of the things I was gonna make a note of, because when we were talking earlier today about some of the losing of the utility techs, I kind of got back to me that was part of it,
Yep, I heard the same thing.
yeah, so.
we'll have one workshop devoted to personnel, and that'd probably be a good time to bring forward any suggestions. I think we're not gonna do it until your
If
return.
I recall, I think the on-call for the utilities text, it's like $40 or something.
Yeah.
For 7 days.
Yeah, so I mean, that's probably way outdated.
If they, if they get called in, they get paid, obviously, but the time that they're waiting to be called in, they're not.
And they're limited in their movements
Yeah.
while they're on
Yeah,
call.
yeah.
From seeing Dan's head nod, I think he's
Emphatically.
heard, I think he's heard
Does it fall off
that,
his
about
head?
that issue as well.
So
So,
it's
Right.
something that we need to
yeah,
Yeah,
talk about.
that would be the,
we've been doing a lot of research on the subject, and yeah, a lot of the counties, interestingly or not, are not employing on-call the way we do. There's much longer conversation to be had, but the short version of it is,
If that's the case, this is not the
yeah,
day.
thank you. Yeah, I
don't
say,
wanna cut you off.
not the time for it, but there is a lot to go into this topic.
And we will look forward to hearing it at the
Maybe not.
appropriate time.
All righty.
Thank
Anything,
you.
gentlemen? Folks?
Thank you.
Thank you kindly. You're welcome.
and I did just get an email from, Circuit Court, that they did get a revised quote, and they can get this court smart, by the end of the year, so.
He just started calling, so I guess.
Good news travels fast.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as they can get it, the PO in a reasonably short time, there should be no problem.
Okay.
Sandra.
For some reason, all this is marked in highlighter.
Huh?
The commissioner's budget is all marked in highlighter.
It is. Well, I guess, good afternoon. I am the last person at the table today. But the first thing I wanted to do was to thank Tanya and Lacey for putting together the budget. They did the lion's share of the work. I'm here to present, but they did a fantastic job. And actually, I think we were the first department to submit our budgets. So,
Yes, you were.
yes. So they should be recognized
I
for
think
that.
finance was the last, but don't tell anyone.
There is an update to the commissioner's budget for the highlights, and it should be noted that the Mako booth has now been moved to economic development, so although you see an increase in operating, that will be updated the next time the budget documents roll up, so there is not that increase. Does that make sense?
I'll take it out.
So that's all we have for
Okay.
the Commissioner's Office budget. Excuse me, the Commissioner's budget. And then for the Commissioner's Office, there's two large asks in the highlights, and the first is that grants manager position. And I think that Ms. Heller probably would like to speak to that a little bit more, but for now, it's nested in this budget to make sure that it doesn't get lost through the process and the conversations and the feedback from the departments on the need for that position. So if you wanted to
That
say
would
anything.
likely not live in this budget, but it is a placeholder. We do not know where that position would be nested, should it get funded. And just as a reminder, any position that you'd like, you're even thinking about funding for the budget, it might not hurt as soon as you know to give us a head nod so we can start advertising. Even if we started advertising right now for any one of the positions that you've heard about today, we'd be lucky to have somebody on board by July 1st.
The only thing I can add is,
I'm going to apologize to you because I actually thought we were, I'm sure we must have took that out of the budget, but I didn't remember it. I thought we were just actively advertising for it and couldn't get one, and couldn't find one, to be honest with you. So I think it's been pointed out a number of times here today that even more than us, there's people in employees that think it's extremely important, and I certainly can't argue with that.
So you're giving the head nod, yes.
Huh?
Your head nod is yes, then.
Oh, I think we should have one for sure. I think
My
it,
head nod is yes, then.
I was gonna say, if you get bored later tonight, there's multiple emails from people supporting the position of this in the personnel
I
section
think,
of this budget.
and I've heard from some of
Yeah.
them today, and I agree with them. And like I said, I apologize. I thought we were actively searching and just couldn't find one. I didn't realize we had struck it out of the budget.
And as Ms. Heller stated, it's possible that we won't even have a candidate for the position. But with that being said, the FY 2025 is fast approaching, and that grant money will become available. So we need to have someone on board to start securing those grants. And the next item is the agenda software, and I know that I've provided small updates to you on that, but in 2016, we went to an electronic meeting software. The implementation of that took half a year to complete, but we've had safe and steady service ever since then. We learned in October that the software provider is no longer going to offer that service, so we need to make a change. So
She's talking about Novus.
I'm talking about the way you receive your meeting packets and the way the public sees all the documents. Yes.
They're not gonna do that no more?
No, they've put a sunset date on it, so
Really?
yes.
When's the sunset?
October of 2024 for support, and then an end of life in October of 2025. So we started out
Do
with
they
12.
have a replacement of some type?
They do. They offer a replacement, but we've also looked at a lot of different vendors as well. We cast the net very far. We started out with about 12 software providers that could actually do the work, and now we're narrowing it down. The thing I can say about the operation part of this is implementation is going to be the most expensive year. And we probably had one of the most cost-effective softwares that was on the market back in 2016, and we had no increases for 8 years. So sticker shock, we're all in it right now with sticker shock.
We're good till October, you're saying?
We are
As
good.
far as,
Yes. But we need to recognize that it takes about 6 months to implement new software.
and you're researching this replacement?
Yes, actively researching and discussing with the implementation team what it would take. We would be part of the programming of it, so that's where that 6 month comes into play. They interview us on what we need, we do a lot of testing, but we're still not at the selection part yet. But again, sticker shock.
So if we wait until July 1st, if we decide to purchase this, we've only got 4 months to get it installed and operational.
No, so maybe I misstated.
It'll go beyond October.
It'll go beyond
But they don't-
October.
but
They're not
they
going to
don't have
support.
after
Right.
October.
The little bugs and fixes that we need to have done right now won't happen after October.
Gotcha.
And then it'll just kind of sail away into the sunset. And we need to be ready to, again, start our new project, train everyone, get everything up and running. So I feel confident that we'll find the right software. I just don't know that we have it yet. So we have a placeholder in, but what we do know from each and every quote that we've gotten back is the year of implementation is extremely expensive.
But this might be something that we really need to, at one of our meetings like in May, maybe think about using contingencies to move it forward in a timely manner.
If it falls within that range and we've made a selection by then, I would say yes. But I don't know that we're there yet. I can say that the interviewing process is very time-consuming because you really need to get down into the board-facing side, the administrative side, and the approval side, which is all the things that happen behind the curtain. And then you have to flip your lens and look at what it looks like to the public. What's the public going to see? Is it transparent? Does it do the things we want it to do? And I'm confident that we have a really good idea of what we want, and I think that everyone would be very pleased if we were to implement it the way that we see it, but we just have to get there.
Very good.
So then we go to legal services.
Before we move on from there,
Yes.
the Jeep that the Commissioner's office had, that somebody almost totaled,
I thought they did.
Somebody did total.
Did total, yeah.
Look, I don't do things halfway. I take that as a real insult, John. I go to total something, I'll total it.
Do we need to think about juggling our car around for the,
So we did juggle.
or
There-
you've already done
Around.
that? You've already
there
done
was
that,
some-
and you've healed
That was in an accident last week. But didn't total it. This person didn't do it the whole way, so.
See that, I hate it, incompetence, you know, if you're gonna do something, you do it right.
Yes, this is a minor.
I went over there and looked for deer hair, blood. I didn't see anything.
Full-on investigation.
I just, full disclosure, I was here after hours, and I was here when that vehicle came back, and it did include all those things.
Add some extras.
I told her though that the brown stuff on the back, that wasn't from the deer. That was from me. When that deer struck me, I
That's
just,
too much information.
So now we're going to go to legal services, and we have had the need for additional legal services, either whether it be outside counsel or inside counsel, there's been additional work. We don't project that decreasing. Things seem to be more complicated than they used to be, so we do have an increase in operating for that line. That's monthly billing projected out.
I got you.
Okay. And the last budget to present is alcohol and tobacco enforcement. And as you were notified this weekend, and I'm happy to report publicly, that we just received additional funding for this fiscal year for tobacco enforcement. And we do have a larger commitment for next year for tobacco enforcement. So hopefully we can offset some of the departmental costs by supplementing services on that side versus what the county pays. But my ask this year is the same as last year, is to increase the hours for the inspector, to take them from 28 hours a week to 40 hours a week. And again, hoping with this strong partnership with the health department, we can offset some of that and shift the dollars around to reflect those efforts.
Okay.
Any questions for me? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Right.
That's a wrap.
Well, thank you all for coming. Those of you that sat in here all day, God love you.
God bless you.